One more buzzer. Can you guys just stand up to make sure when you stand up, the mic isn't gonna like come off? Good. Good. Actually, wait, his mic is under your chair. Can I take a little? Yeah. So, okay, we're good.
All good?
So where are you from, Candace?
CanWest Interactive.
You can read it up there. Oh, you're from here? You're a graduate from here?
And U of T.
Oh, really? And you're a graduate from here too? I'm not.
You're the outcast.
Yes. Does this happen on a regular basis, or is this?
My first time.
Oh, okay. When you came here, attended school here, you never had it?
No.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know where they got all that stuff.
Did you write your own?
No. I was thrown here because it was first Dan, see if he could come, then Sandra couldn't come. Then they just, Dan just said they wanted to go.
We worked on projects together.
Yeah, he was saying.
Yeah, to the beach, Maple Shores, Emerald.
Yeah. I was expecting a couple of desks squished together, and I feel like I should have an agent.
Number one defense should be able to number one
I think there should be green screen behind us, and they can do all kinds of fun animation stuff.
Sitting in the park.
Chairman.
Exactly.
Sure.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Robert. Hi, I'm Robert. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Candace.
Hi.
I saw you trying to escape to the back there.
Yeah.
You were trying to get a seat there.
Well,
Good looking, things like that.
We are podcasting today, so
keep this on there for you
everybody
guys.
doesn't mind being filmed. If you do mind, too bad. Welcome everybody. This is part of Broadcasting and Film and New Media's joint project. That idea came up a couple of years ago. We wanted to try and get students who are studying both broadcasting and film and new media together in the same room, talk about some of the same ideas that they shared, work on things together. So we've been doing this now for actually 3 semesters. This will be the 4th. There's also some animation students here, which we'd also is part of our cluster group, which is integrated media. So we also share a lot of the same things with our animation friends. So today we've got a panel discussion. We have 4 guests from the industry who are working in hybrid media. Hybrid media is a combination of all those things. It's, you know, how do you blend film, television, new media, animation? How do you bring all those things together and maybe go into some new territory? How do you serve the entertainment industry? There's all these different questions that come up in that area. As you know, things are moving, you know, very rapidly forward in those particular areas. You went to some of you went to a gallery last week and saw some of the work that comes out of the Canadian Film Centre's New Media Group. So you have an idea about what a lot of people who are in your same areas of study are doing. So I'll ask each of our panelists if they wouldn't mind to maybe introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do. And we do like to sort of keep everybody engaged throughout the whole thing. We are actually rolling right now on tape, and we'll be broadcasting this as a little podcast on our website later. So maybe we'll start at the end here. Candace Lee is a multimedia producer, and she's currently with CanWest. Ronald Ruslam is with March Entertainment, who's a multimedia producer. Pary Bell is Director of Online Media at Alliance Atlantis. And Robert Santen, correct?
Almost.
Santen, sorry. Robert Santen is with the TVO project that's around the Citizens Assembly, which some of you are going to be working on. So maybe if we could start with Candace, she can kind of introduce herself, and we'll go from there.
Geez. Well, I think some of you may know me. I see a couple of familiar faces here. I taught here, some of you guys, I guess a year ago now. But I'm at CanWest Interactive, and I know some of you may or may not know what that is, but it's pretty much the online division of CanWest MediaWorks. So we are responsible for, or we own Global, the National Post, and a bunch of 11 different newspapers across the country. DOS as well. You guys may be familiar with that. So essentially, I'm responsible for all the online multimedia components for all those different properties. It's a lot of working with Global to digitize TV segments and news segments. We're also launching new initiatives to put our content on Blackberries and cell phones and other third-party devices. So it's pretty much in a nutshell, lots of video and lots of digitization for CanWest.
Hi, I'm Rob Ruslam. I work for March Entertainment. We are an animation firm that actually was founded in 2003 as March Entertainment. But before that, we were actually a company called Infopreneur. You might have known us for one of our flagship shows that actually airs on the CBC, which is chilibeach.com. We also create a few other shows. Yammerl is the Adventures of Yammerl and the Happy Kingdom, and another show called Maple Shorts. All these shows were broadcast on the CBC, and actually Yammerl is starting to broadcast over on Cartoon Network in the US. I work, my position is the Director of Technology and New Media. We're having an online push. One of our new sites is actually ilaugh.com, where we're having our comedy showcase there, and also some new edgy content.
My name is Pary Bell. I'm the Director of Online Media, as you said, at Alliance Atlantis. I work specifically in the broadcast side of, on the broadcast side. I'll talk a little bit after about some of the moves that we've been making to bridge that gap and the term of hybrid media here. We're making some strong moves towards that as well as an organization. I'll talk about that after. But essentially, I am in charge of the content on 13 broadcast websites. So it varies from, you may know some of them, the Food Network Canada and HGTV, to Showcase and the Life Network, amongst others. There's 13. But we have begun a really big shift and change in philosophy of what, as a big broadcast company, we want to do in emerging media. So it'll be interesting to talk about. Go ahead.
I'm Robert Santen. I'm currently on contract with TV Ontario, and the reason I'm there is because they are having a big push towards new media, or just media, the current media. I don't know if anybody's been to the TVO.org website in the past and and recently. But some of the sites are still very static, and some of the newer sites that have been developed over the last couple of months are very interactive and very community-based. And TV Ontario is trying to go towards a model where there's an interactivity between the shows that are on the air and the online content as well. So what you'll see now is, for example, on The Agenda, which is a new show on TVO, where every Thursday, I believe, the show is dedicated to the online community and what questions are being asked there and what discussions are taking place there. So it's they're trying to integrate both media into one thing, and I'm there to make that happen, basically.
Yeah, just step in a little bit. I think maybe what might be an idea is to pose a few questions to you folks, and then, of course, the floor is open at any point. If you have a question, please yell out. We'll try and get the question up too. I think one of the issues for a lot of folks right now is there an industry that young people like our graduates can work in, and what might be some of the areas that you're seeing develop and become those areas? So maybe just start with Candace. You're a graduate from our program, so obviously you've found some success here already. How's it going? What's the industry doing for you as a career person?
Well, I guess the best way to start by answering that is when I was at UT, and before I even decided to come into the Centennial program, I sat down with the supervisor of new media and said, asked that same question: what job can I get out of this? Like, what kind of career can I look forward to? And he just looked at me and said, well, you'll create your own position. And thought that was an answer, and I walked out of his room and scratched my head and thought, I don't know what that means. But I went into the program, and as it turns out, I've created my own position, and I can see now in the year that I've spent at CanWest and working with other divisions within the company and other companies as well, that traditional positions or roles have changed. Sorry, that there's not necessarily room for just a web designer or a video person or somebody in the studio, that we're all integrating, whether it's doing video work at the studio level and digitizing it and cutting another clip for the web, or if it's one person who's doing graphics, animation, flash, voiceovers, audio, multimedia. So basically right now the workplace industry, as I'm seeing it, is that there's really a need for people with multiple skills, with all the new media skills, or to run a multimedia center where we're people who do a bit of everything instead of 5 people with different roles.
Pary, what do you think?
Well, I can address this really easily in one step in terms of Alliance Atlantis. We no longer refer to a massive portion of the company as programming. We recognize we're a broadcast company, but we've changed even the terminology from programming to content. We are a content company, and how we deliver that content on different platforms is a different issue altogether. There's a recognition now that all these different, I'll refer to it as emerging media, but it's this multi-platform world. The delivery of content is going to be directed differently on smaller screens, on different devices and whatnot, and it needs to actually be there's a lot of specialty that's required in programming that content on the different platforms. So we've made that first move in terms of the digital media group that I'm part of. We are under the content heading at Alliance Atlantis. We work in partnership with all of the people that work on the television side, and we work with people that are programming things for mobile. Online is just one platform that we're working towards. It's an exciting time. You'll hear that all the time because things are changing really fast. The appetite for for consuming media is insatiable at the moment. But if anyone's sort of raising that flag and saying linear broadcasting is dead, they're wrong as well, because people want to consume media, but where they want to and how they want to. And it's just that distinction between passive viewing on television in a linear format to the more active viewing on a computer monitor or an iPod or whatnot. So I think, if anything, right now the opportunities are expanding exponentially. In our department, I arrived at the beginning of June, and we have started to make with so many changes in the interactive side that our digital media team has grown from about 30 when I joined to 67 at the moment. We've got an incredible commitment from the senior management team to say digital media is important, and we have to not just start reacting. We have to be on the offensive, and we have to start programming content specifically for that medium. I'll talk more about that after, but it's an indication of where some things are moving.
Oh, very interesting. The recent slate of shows coming out for this fall. For example, like Heroes, which is very much an online novel or online graphic novel. Those kinds of things going on at Alliance Atlantis?
Yeah, we're beginning to the involvement of the producers working on specific programming. We are now working hand in hand with them, where I've got a commissioning budget where we're working up proposals to try to get exclusive online content. Kenny versus Spenny, I don't know if you guys know that show, but we commissioned 20 webisodes from them. It's content that goes beyond what you can do on TV. Some of it's really out there, but it is a first step in actually getting producers to really concentrate on creating some unique content for the web that engages users on the other platform. We're doing the same thing with some of our cooking shows, where if you watch the Food Network at all, you'll see more and more cooking shows tend to be going more towards the entertainment. You watch it, it's about buying the food, it's about entertaining and the wine and all the fun, and you watch a half-hour show and you go, well, I don't really know how to make what they just made. That's the move, is entertainment, and what we can fill that gap in on the Food Network side will be more technique, more close-shot technique videos and recipes to enhance the programming on air. Heroes is a good example in terms of releasing content and letting go of that clutch. The content's got to be released at 9 p.m. on Tuesdays only, and if you miss it, too bad for you. PVRs have changed that. We are now streaming full episodes of shows on the Homes on Homes on HGTV. We're streaming full episodes online. It's a beginning. We're not where it's got to go, but we're just getting started.
Ronald, what's happening with March? Is that a great place to work?
Well, at March, it's funny because Chili Beach are one of our main shows that we produce. We've produced 3 seasons, and I think the last season is going to air on CBC quite soon. It was actually born on the web. It was in 1997 we actually started using Flash, and we actually created webisodes, and then it was a long time. It was until 2003 that we actually got a season to go to air it on television. And it's quite interesting because of the fact that when you produce for the web, it is different in the way than if you produce for television. There was a huge learning curve for us, because when you produce stuff for the web, there's a lot more factors that have to keep in mind. There's a limited bandwidth by which people can get the information and view it and see things on the screen. It's also a different form factor. But we also have to understand that doing stuff on the web, you can also do a lot more. There's an interactivity element that you can't get from television. And it's funny now, after doing 3 seasons of Chili Beach and also doing a number of other shows, we're now actually going back to the web, and we're broadcasting shows directly for the web. And they're actually on ilaugh.com. And I think this is a very exciting space because TV is not going to be replaced per se. It's being enhanced by having the web coming into play online. and also all the different types of ways that you can get medium, the content, whether it be on your cell phone or on a portable device. All this is just getting the content to you faster, quicker than it ever was in the past. A good example is Heroes. Like, that's a television show that's, when it's broadcast, an hour later it's already available on iTunes for you to actually purchase and download. And that type of thing was never done in the past. Usually it's just broadcast at a certain time, and that's the only way you could actually get that content. But people are demanding it. People want to have it, to be able to watch the content the way that they want to watch it. And television is a lean back, computer is a lean forward. I think in the future it'll be a combination of both, where you're going to have things that you can lean back and watch, and then at certain points you might be able to interact. And it'll be an exciting space because it'll create a lot of new and different jobs that don't even exist today.
Well, Robert, at TV Ontario, there's been quite a shift, I understand, in the last little while. Maybe that would be something that you could tell us a little bit about, the shift from programming over to the web.
Well, I can tell you about it from my point of view, and I haven't been there that long. I was called in because they didn't have a person to create the front end for these new websites that they're creating. But what I did notice when I initially got there is that no one was working at TV Ontario. I was the only one there in that department, and my boss. And I asked, where are all these people? Well, they were sent on vacation. And before the vacation, they had a certain job, and when they got back, and they didn't know this, they all of a sudden had a different job. Everybody, almost everybody at TV Ontario was assigned a different job. When, and I don't know if you have the profile up of the person that was supposed to be here instead of me, Keith, he was a television producer. And he produced shows like Studio 2, which you might know. And all of a sudden, he came back from his vacation, and now he's a web producer. And he doesn't know what that means. Or he didn't know what that means. He knows now, but I'm not sure if he's happy or not. The reason he's not here is because he had a migraine headache. I don't know how he got that, but maybe because of this. So right now, he's solely responsible for producing content, and specifically for Citizens Assembly. And Citizens Assembly is a forum that's being held all over Ontario right now to look at the voting system in Ontario to see if it should be changed or not, the way that we elect politicians in Ontario. And part of the site and part of the content is the discussions that are being held all over Ontario are immediately put on the web for people to see. It's being streamed live on that website, and then later it's available for you to download and take a look at. It's not the most riveting content, but if it is, it is cutting edge for TV Ontario that it actually is being streamed live, and then immediately available for people to see as well. So that's the big shift is the shift to online, where TV Ontario is a very traditional company with cameras and studios, and that's still going on, but the shift is towards putting everything on the internet. And just to hook into some of what the other people said, television, the traditional television, I heard you mention if you say it's dead, you could be wrong. I think it's got one foot in the grave. I think the entire television spectrum will disappear, and it will all be about creating content, and creating content will be for everyone. And I think if you're looking for a job, if you can create or facilitate the creation of content for everyone, I think you're going to have a good job and be wealthy at it as well.
Maybe just a kind of a follow-along to that, Robert, which you mentioned that these people who came back from their vacations and they suddenly become web producers. And I'm just, maybe a couple of you have comments about that. Like, what's the difference? What's the difference between somebody who is in television producing and now a web producer?
Well, in fact, there's not much different. You have to create content, and it has to be something that someone wants to see. And if they don't want to see it, then you'll be out of business soon, right? So I think it's more the idea that's very different. You know, all of a sudden you have to do something on a computer, which you used to do, you know, maybe on paper, or you used to write something on the computer. That's as far as it went. But now actually inputting it into a interface where if you input it, it'll be directly live on the internet, and people can see it, people can judge it, people can directly comment on it and say, you know, and we see that a lot now with the Agenda website. You know, I mean, the facility is there and people use it. They have no qualms about saying what they think about the site, about the show, about the topics that are discussed there, and it's interesting. But I think it's the idea that's the difficult part.
What about Candace? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't had that much interaction at Global with the TV producers. I've had some, but I would imagine that they're two different animals. And where for TV, it's you know, that linear linear passive programming that you're putting out, and they have their own schedule and their production, and it's pretty much a fine-tuned system. But working with the web producers, it's coming up with that angle and that extra additional online exclusive content that's going to get people to the site. And that could be anything from an interactive flash quiz to podcasts to, we did with From the Ground Up, we had the TV producers, before they even started shooting, set off time with each week they were shooting just one-on-ones with the cast, and they would sort of comment to the camera and have their own sort of bios or their own I can't think of the word for some reason, but we just had our own original content that was shot during production but sent just for us. And you'll see a lot of TV will throw to the web and try and push users to the website, but coming up with that interactive content, the forums, the podcasts, repurposing the TV content in a form that people on dial-up or with different technological restraints could get. I think that they should. Right now, they're two different positions, and maybe in the future they'll be one or be working more closely together. But definitely now we're seeing a culture shift in the regular TV production. Before even new seasons start or new shows are signed on at the TV stations, they're having meetings with their online team, and they're bringing them in at the very beginning to see, you know, what we can do and brainstorm ideas and how to make this unique and successful both on TV and online. So I think there's definitely some room to grow, and we're starting, but we're getting better at really sort of synchronizing the two elements.
Well, right off the bat, producer is one of those terms that's probably, it is such a wide-ranging term. It can mean so many things. That I used to work at the CBC, now I'm at Alliance Atlantis. The term producer, both for television and for online, they're completely different. The titles are the same, but the job responsibilities are entirely different. A unique situation at TVO in terms of they are actually producing most of their content in-house. Most broadcasters out there are not actual production places. Alliance has maybe one show that we produce entirely in-house. Other than that, we are producers would be working on maybe commercials or promos or something like that. I mean, CTV, you all know there's maybe one show that I don't even know, maybe Canada AM would be the only show that they actually produce. It's all about so the term producer can mean, it can go from actually producing a small segment to being in charge of an entire production or a TV show, to being on a dose.ca and actually creating content that's separate from anything. It's a really wide-ranging term, and that's part of the problem with how things move forward. Is there is no consistency and standardization of what the titles are. That's a problem. In my experience, would I be pleased if a bunch of TV producers were flipped over immediately and thrown at me and said, these people are now your group of producers in your group? No, not at all. In the same way that I wouldn't expect web producers in my group to be all of a sudden turn and be responsible for an entire production on television. It just wouldn't work. The level of expertise of having gone through a broadcast the schooling, like those of you who are in here right now doing broadcast training in schooling to be looking to be a producer, is entirely different than the folks that are doing the new media design side. Entirely different focus, different budgets, different terms. You're doing entirely different things. There is crossover though, where you are producing work that's going to be linear online, and there's going to be moves, like Ron said, into more interactive stuff on air, but they are completely different beasts. Absolutely. Get a look at a budget for a TV show, and have a look at a budget of what you can do online, and you'll see the difference right away.
Well, all the line items are different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to keep in mind. When it comes to television, like when you're producing stuff for television, it's totally different than if you're producing for the web. And one of the major mistakes that a lot of networks do, they think that, oh, in order for us to have a web play, we'll just take all the content we got and just reformat for the web. We'll just throw it up there. The whole thing is when people go to the website, there's, like, you thought television was, you had choices, like you had a few hundred channels. When it comes to the web, you got billions of choices. It all depends on the number, all the IP addresses that you can think of, and even then, it's getting even larger. So you can't just throw the content on there. You have to you have to think of the experience, because the experience is different. Again, television, lean back, totally passive. You're just watching and getting entertained. While in a computer, you can do so much more. You can actually interact. So you have to think there, how am I going to capture an audience online? Because it's different. It's harder to get a person to stay on your site and capture their interest. So and I know that because of the fact that I was there for Chili Beach when it was a website, and then when it went to television, and now we're going back to the web. It's harder because of the number of choices. So what we try to do is we try to create an experience for the user. So whether it be games, whether it be blogs, forums, whatever. But you have those choices when it comes to online, which you don't have on television. So yes, taking a position and just saying there for television, you just have it and call it a web position just because they can throw stuff on the web, they're not equal in any way.
This idea of taking many media forms and bringing them together on the web is really kind of, I think, responsible in some way for where we are right now, with the fact that here we have 4 individuals who are in an industry that is combining all those forms together. What's the thinking in the industry? I mean, you're working every day in this field. What's the thinking in the industry and the direction that things are going for combining all these things together? Any ideas? Yeah, Pary?
Well, I mean, earlier in terms of my allusion that TVO is a public company versus the rest of us are working for private companies, one big thing that's changing is the media, we are not just out there for the good of people. We are actually out there to make money. I mean, that's the bottom line, is if we can't distribute this content and try to get a return on that investment, we won't be around. That investment in our group growing from 32 to 67, if we can't sustain that, we won't be 67 for very long. We'll be back to 32, and we'll be doing the shovelware that Ron was talking about, slapping brochures back up online. The interest is there. People are consuming it. YouTube has changed the way everyone thinks about video online, and has shown that actually it is a way that people want to consume it. What we're seeing overall in the media trends is that if you're paying attention to what's being written right now in terms of ad media on television, it's in decline. PVRs are changing the way people are watching television, and the ad media industry is very much aware of it. They're almost at that panic stage of holy crap, what are we going to do? We're not going to have our jobs for very long. So they're starting to work on things like branded entertainment, where they're doing, Dove is an example, with the long-form campaign commercials that They were initiated. They were produced exclusively for online. Now they're appearing on television and whatnot. But if you go to YouTube and see how many hundreds of thousands of people have watched these branded little exposés on body identity and that stuff. If you haven't been aware of it, go check it out. It's really worth seeing. Another example of branded advertising that works online is the Phyllis Shave. If you haven't seen it, they're hilarious. The body shaver. It's a grooming thing. It's crazy. It's funny, but you got to check that out as well. It's completely produced for online. It got so popular that it has been a really unique form of creating content and advertising. Where I come back to this is in terms of the money. Make no bones about it. Money is what's going to help drive the content where it's going to be. That difference between a television production and an online production, it's getting closer. We are actually able to start spending some real money on producing some web content, but the funding's not there and the model's not there. But it's growing. But it is, like Ron and Candace both said, people are demanding that content when they want it. So ultimately, it'll be the users that are going to determine how it's going to be delivered. So I think that is a little explanation.
What's interesting in relation to that is that TV Ontario is obviously a public company and funded heavily by the government of Ontario. However, with this shift to the new platform, the web-based platform, they've actually found a way to create another revenue stream. Nobody's actually bought any ads yet, but that's coming when the website becomes more popular, and obviously you get more eyeballs, and you will get people interested to advertise there, and that's integrated into this new platform as well. So you can see, I don't know if it's because the funding was cut or because they just found a new way to generate new revenue. But that's certainly one of the motivations to go to the web as well, is to generate cash, and that's you're very right about that. It's all about money, and if you find a way to integrate that commercial message with your content, that's what you're looking for. There's another video or an ad that was produced by Honda Accord. Maybe you've all seen it or not. That was specifically produced for the web. It's fantastic. Go look it up on YouTube. We have to make a list of all the things you have to go look up on YouTube. And we're being paid by YouTube, by the way. So, but it was exclusively produced for the web. Instead of spending the money on broadcasting the ad, they spend the money on creating this ad. They spent about $8 million on it. They did 860 takes, I think, to get this right.
Oh, I know it is.
The continuous stream, and it's a huge hit, and it worked for them. And they spend less money on it than if they had to broadcast it all over every medium in the world. So.
Certainly the car manufacturers have got lots of money to spend. BMW did those series of produced films. I think those were done like almost 5 years ago now. Yeah. And those were online, no, not 5, maybe 4 years ago. Yeah. But that was online content, wasn't designed for anything else. So it's pretty interesting that that this branded content is becoming a programming choice. I think that's a pretty interesting trend.
Well, and a big change, a shift is when on the television side, I work really closely with the VPs of programming for the different networks. I'm now invited to the table when people are pitching ideas for shows. So a pitch comes in from a production company, and we are not interested in it if they're not actually thinking of what else we can do to engage the user. If it's simply a TV show, it's going to have to be an incredible pitch to warrant going into the green light stage or even development. If it doesn't have another hook to it that we can move forward with, so that's a big change in the traditional model as well.
Okay.
Well, just to comment on the advertising issue, we're seeing a lot with our advertisers in our sales group that in some instances, the advertisers are actually dictating the content to us, or we've sold this, now we have to provide the content for it. So we'll sell microsites or we'll sell features, and then it's we're running to catch up to build the content for it. But we saw that with Dose. I know it used to be a paper, and they were finding that none of the advertisers were wanting to buy ads in the paper because everyone in that demographic was getting all their impressions online. So it was a company shift to kill the paper and just focus on all the ads online. But we with the branded media, we're seeing a lot of sponsoring events and sponsoring shows. Like we have Survivor's been sponsored by Pontiac. So every time you watch a Survivor clip on our website, it's going to have the Pontiac commercial on it, and we're actually stitching commercials manually in our video clips in front of everything. So we're seeing a lot that advertisers are actually really excited about jumping on new initiatives. We had a really great response with selling commercial spots on our BlackBerry TV clips. That now, so again, all the media that we're providing to BlackBerry has a 5-second little dot spot stitched into it. So we're making a lot of headway with that, but advertisers are really looking to sponsor events and put their name on some content online.
And one of the very interesting developments recently, and this is for everyone who has an iPod or an MP3 player, you probably get most of your stuff from somewhere. I don't even want to know where, but you're not paying for it in any case. And some of the stuff you are paying for it, but the big music companies have finally given up on trying to get you to pay for their stuff, and they finally have agreed to a model where you can download your music for free, which is the only way they could see to make any money. The only thing you have to do is sit through a 15-second commercial before you get your music file. And that's very exciting for the consumer, and it's very exciting for the music industry because they get some of their revenue back. So, and I believe the company that's doing that now, I think it's called Leapfrog, but maybe the wrong name. It has frog in it, but...
Well, actually, I'd like to sort of open the floor up for our students to ask questions, and I'm sure there's some burning questions out there. Who's got some questions for our panelists? Yeah, pass the mic over to you, and if you could just...
Hi, I just had a question. I wonder if you can be a bit more specific with kind of your roles and duties. I guess you all seem to be in some sort of producer or kind of director-orientated positions, and I think it goes back to what you're saying, Pary, is that has a lot of definitions. I'm just wondering, like, at any point in your job, are you still sitting down at a more basic level and just with the computer and creating something, or is it all supervisory, or like are you still idea people, or are you just managing the ideas type thing?
I'll take a stab at that. My position is actually director of new media and technology. So before, when we were actually producing everything for television, I was mostly, just put it simply, IT. And my new media role was mostly just making sure that we had some websites and they were up and they were working, so on and so forth. Now, with the push going back to online, now new media has come into focus. So now my role is actually not only putting up websites, but also looking at the content, seeing how we can intermingle the interactivity into it, also making sure that I can get on into different formats, and taking a lot of the things that I had in the past now bringing back into the forefront. Because again, when you're producing stuff for a web, it's different. You got to take into consider bandwidth and who you're going to actually target and how do you get to that target market. And it's different than in television, because television you can buy Nielsen reports and they can tell you, oh, you had these many viewers depending on this sample size. On the web, you can go beyond that. You can tell how many times people have actually watched your episode. You can try to intermingle things where you can have the interactivity and use that to see how far in the episode they actually watched. You can get even, if you ask them, you can find out who they are, and you can try to get that information of that demographic, like a little bit more profiling involved, and which you can do on the web, you can't do on television. So it's my position. It's kind of like it changes every day. And so for me, I'm rarely throughout the day am I actually sitting down and actually creating stuff. I'm mostly looking for new technologies. I'm also managing a group. We actually have all our animation done in Sudbury, so I also have to remotely manage a group over there. So it's interesting. It's quite exciting.
So for me, it might help you. I went to Centennial and I graduated in 2002, I think. Yep. So not that long ago. I left. I did my third semester. I did the new media design program. In my third semester, I took an internship at CBC. I started as an associate producer. I got promoted to a producer position in maybe 2 months or so, and I was very hands-on. I was actually creating stuff in Flash and HTML, doing some video work, and continued along that track until I became the senior producer running the whole children's and youth, the Kids TV Interactive, not Kids TV, Kids Interactive at CBC, building games. I actually worked with Ron. We did stuff with March for Chili Beach, for Yamroll, and Maple Shorts, built sites, very hands-in, even though I was managing a team of about 8 or 9. Still was producing work, still was creating work. I got more and more managing when I was running that team and commissioning games and doing some other things. Now that I've stepped over to Alliance Atlantis, I'm in charge of 13 sites, the creative direction. I have a team of 24 now, web coordinators, producers, designers, I have managers. It's a big unit, and to be honest with you, I am opening Photoshop or Illustrator once in a while to show one of the designers something, but my feet are in there, my hands are on everything, but it's more on the creative direction and overall strategy. I think that's kind of an evolution in terms of if you do continue to rise up in terms of the ranks, you start getting more in charge of strategies and overall direction and less hands in there. But it's happening. It happens pretty fast in our industry, and the teams are pretty young, and so people are making a lot of really significant decisions. Even 3 years out of school or 2 years out of school. It's kind of interesting. Yeah,
and it's something else to keep in mind. I'm sure Pary would probably agree, is that hands-on stuff is actually quite important to actually understand how. You don't need to be proficient at it, but you have to have a good understanding. Definitely, like I have a group, and actually my background, I graduated from University of Waterloo. I took computer science. I'm a programmer actually, but I've risen through the ranks, and it was quite interesting. I lived through the whole, dot bombs and scenario, and I actually ended up at March Entertainment, and now I probably know quite a bit about developing animation for television. And one of the things is it's always good to have all those hands-on things to understand it, because that's the only way that you can actually give direction, per se, for a lot of the larger initiatives. Again, I don't have proficiency in programming. I knew that I couldn't really be a #1 programmer, but I do have some stars working for me. But having that base understanding, I know what can and can't be done in the technology. So.
It sounds like I'm one of the fortunate ones who's responsible of strategy and all the day-to-day grunt work.
You don't have enough people for it, or
no. Basically, I am responsible for the video strategy and multimedia and anything under the sun that comes my way, but I'm also the one that does it all. So aside from, if that means, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, capturing a clip off of the morning news, chopping it down, converting it, compressing it, digitizing it to BlackBerry. But last week I was out at Fashion Week at all hours of the night, filming the runway, coming back to the office, editing it, slapping animations on it, putting it out on the web for the next morning. We've grown. I have a couple of people working for me. Another graduate here is in the evenings, and we're pretty much almost 24 hours now, working 7 days a week, and it's very grunt, very intensive, very much manual labor. But you have to get it done. And so anything from making flash animations to building ad spots and commercials and voiceovers, to digitizing news, to doing interviews with the BC Boys or Stephen Lewis or anyone. We're in the thick of it pretty much, and it's a lot of fun. The deadlines are pretty tight. I think that's one thing to be aware of is when you go in the industry, especially online, things have to be done the day before you know about it, and you don't have much time to work on it, which is a bit different than TV. But so you have to be fast and get it done as best you can, and there's always a new project and always something else to work on, so you're never bored.
I'm actually a graduate of radio and television arts at Ryerson, and it's kind of the reverse from Ronald. I never really worked in television. I graduated, and what did I do? I went to Japan for a couple of years. I acted in some movies, and after that I ended up in the dot boom, and I created a company with my brother, which was quite successful, and I graduated to this managerial role that was mentioned here, and didn't like it at all. I learned to program, and I sold my stake in the company, and now I'm an independent, you can say freelancer. I run my own company, and I'm very hands-on. I do all kinds of programming. I'm proficient in several different languages, programming languages, and that's also my role at TV Ontario right now, is to program the actual front end of the website, of all the websites. But I'm also involved in creating the processes, creating the workflow, creating the functionality of the sites, what is going to happen when you get to the site, how can it be done. Once that's decided, I'm the one that programs it. I'm the one that makes it appear on the screen when you go to their website. I do this for several large companies, but very hands-on. So I don't really have anything to do with the production side of the content, but more of the functionality.
The one other thing I would mention, Candace was in their place, the multimedia. I mean, you're director. You're a multimedia producer. Some places are a little more. You've got several hats and you're putting on it. Other ones are a little more. You're a designer, you design. You're a programmer, you program. You might be a database person. If you're a database person, you're not likely writing an article or interviewing someone. But some places are, because of the nature, smaller and more nimble. And there's niches for all people who have a broad range of skills, as well as people that are really focused and really proficient at one thing.
Yeah, I think, and maybe even going back to the earlier question about what jobs are out there, when I started at CanWest, it was originally they wanted to hire somebody to support global TV online, and that this body was to be dedicated to helping put clips up on the website. But then it was decided that role should be expanded to support all of the properties, and so I came in and found out that I had to support a large network TV station, newspapers, and an entire online network. And we've gone from having a couple of news clips in real player format up to having multiple video players, tons of original content, and we're just kind of running to see what we can do, and we don't really shoot down any ideas. And very quickly we went from being just digitizing news to covering live events and putting a lot of great content up, and we're getting a lot of great responses from it. Like now we even have dedicated video spots on the Can.com main page, but essentially it's more of just running with that role, and now it's been almost a year, so it's playing catch up with process and a bit of pushing back and trying to communicate that these things take time, and trying to actually build stability and infrastructure in the department while kind of trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think you really have to. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think you really have to realize that we call it new media, whatever we call it, it is changing at such a rapid pace that you really don't know what skills will be required next month, next year. Someone can come up with a new technology. I don't know if anybody's heard of Ajax. Ajax is a programming language which is changing the way that websites are becoming interactive. The web is no longer a static place, but it truly is interactive, where there's a live connection between the server and your computer. That is going to be expanded. There's all kinds of new technology that is being developed right now that we just don't know. And whatever you're specializing in now may be obsolete in a couple of years. So my advice, if there is anything, is to be open to everything and to try and learn as much as possible, because you're going to need it.
Okay. I guess follow up that question about how new media, some of it's not that new, sort of been around for 4 or 5 years, and the industry is sort of catching up with it and tailoring it for the web. What do you, where do you look for, and what sort of technologies do you look for in the future? Maybe devices, or you mentioned Ajax, which is, really cool, Ruby and stuff like that. What are you sort of looking for? What are you placing your bets on?
One of the funniest things, I was interviewing someone about a month ago for a job, and they asked me, where do you see digital media being in 10 years from now? And I almost spit my coffee out, thinking 10 years from now. I mean, think back to 10 years ago. Most people I knew, I was one of the few people who even had an email address. In 10 years, it's changed that fast. It's hard to project that far ahead. I mean, most of you are young enough that Google's always been there. It's a different thing for people so the term new media, you're right, it's a bit ridiculous. It's media now, but there is still some need to draw a line of distinction. I don't know how long that'll go for. In terms of specific technologies, well, some of the things in designing effective content, I mentioned YouTube has changed everything. One of the important things is you can create the best content in the world, but if people can't find it or they don't know where it is, it's going to die. So simple things like search engine optimization or SEO has become paramount. I mean, to be is to be Googled. If you can't find me, then I have no chance of succeeding. So how Ajax is helping that in terms of creating content that's not, you can still have that dynamic nature without having to be hidden from the search engines. CSS has, I mean, you'll see if you've looked at the emergence now of IE7, Microsoft is finally having to actually, they're not up to speed, but they're actually recognizing the importance of CSS. There's going to be all kinds of things that change. Social media has been a bit of a buzz term this past year with Web 2.0 and Ajax is part of that, and open source, and that stuff is actually coming, and as people figure out how to monetize it, it will be even more relevant. User-generated content, it's a beginning, but there's a lot of crap that users are generating, and how do you get through that? So technology it'll come and go, and it'll change. But from where I'm sitting right now, it's all I focus on is user engagement, and we'll get to it however we have to with whatever technology we have.
I think even like you were asking what technology we're looking for, I think we're following what you guys are looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a look at the media companies, they'll be on board with their ads and content as soon as it's been ingested by the mass population, right? So we're not really coming up with anything new on our end in terms of deploying stuff. It's more, you tell us how you want it and we'll sell it and get it to you, if that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, and the people that break the trail are taking the chances. Ultimately, for instance, I mean, we as a group will probably be designing with Ajax and whatnot, but we're waiting till it kind of is a norm. There are the sites and companies out there that they're all about pushing the medium, right on the razor's edge, going hard and sometimes they crash and burn because no one picks up on that. But the mainstream from broadcasting side and communication side of we're not going to be on that razor's edge of doing the absolute new plugin, new this, new that. It's going to be using what's established, what's working well. You'll hear terms. The other buzzwords are the long tail, for instance. We are going to focus on what the largest population of people are using and we can service. So that's why people like me on an Apple using Safari get left out of the loop most of the time. And people are still having to design for, IE 5.5 or 5 and 6. And because there's still a massive population there. That's why every time Flash plugin comes out, and you still have to make your base level, and you can increase from resolutions on monitors. We finally now are able to say, you know what, if you're on an 800 by 600 monitor, good for you. But we're not designing for that anymore, and we're finally at that stage. But we're still only at 1024 by 768,
yeah.
Which is better, but it's like, when you have a nice big monitor, it's crap. So we have to play to the big population of who the users are in that group. And it's the same thing on television. Those shows that really push the envelope on television or animation, they may succeed really well, or they may crash and burn really fast. And that's why you've got a lot of crap on TV.
Over at March, like at the beginning there, like for Chili Beach, we were pushing the edge, like in 1997, doing webisodes. Even back then, we had to use the real player because Flash Player didn't even exist at that point in time. And nowadays, like at March, we're taking the chances now. We're actually creating content for web first, then television second. Which is a stark difference than if you asked me that question last year. Last year was television first, then web second, and now with so that's something to keep in mind, that nowadays, like even the broadcaster is changing. In my mind, Google could be considered a broadcaster now with YouTube and its content there, and it's Google Video. Like, it's the new type of broadcasting.
And gaming is
and gaming is also a big thing, which is because right now, how much time do you spend watching television compared to the time that you spend in front of your computer? I mean, we're fighting for your attention. And right now, we're doing it any way possible. Like, we'll be on the web, we'll be on television, we'll be everywhere, because we want to get your eyeballs and we want to keep your attention. So we have to be there in all those different types of mediums. What technology will exist, 5 years from now? I'm still looking forward to next week, per se. I mean, I'm looking at stuff like IPTV, but like looking at some of the new stuff they're producing in China, which is more like point-to-point broadcast television, which is quite interesting. Taking some I don't know if any of you use BitTorrent, probably all of you have, but it's using that point-to-point technology for television. And if you have more people viewing a channel, the better quality the channel will become. It's quite interesting, like the new technology that's coming out. And all this stuff is, it's funny because coming from living through the whole .com type scenario, bubble burst, so on and so forth, a lot of those people that had those plans, like in 2000, they couldn't be implemented. All that talk is now coming to fruition because now we do have the bandwidth. Now we have like DSL, we have that type of bandwidth. Take a look at the video that you can watch now on your computer compared to back then in 2000. Before, it used to be a postage note. It was like that. It was a talking head. Yeah, you can do anything.
I mean, you mentioned dial-up. Anything I produce that if you're on dial-up, then
tough
sorry,
luck.
But join the revolution.
Yeah, It's funny because dial-up pretty much costs the same as at least getting DSL Lite. So why would you even be on dial-up, right? So that's the type of thing. Technology is moving so fast, and how do you keep up? Well, you just try to just get in the know, read on trade magazines, so on, so read online. You don't have to buy magazines. You can just probably read it online anyway. You just try to keep in touch in the area that you have interest in, and just remember to be flexible. Like don't always think that I'm just going to do this, because everything is changing. That's the only constant nowadays, is change, and that's true now more than ever.
What's interesting, what we're discussing here is we're talking about the web, and we're talking about television, and we're talking about certain platforms. I think my vision of the future, and it's not a unique vision. In fact, if you look at what Google's doing, Google as a company, you can see a glimpse of the future. There won't be a platform anymore. In fact, the only thing that will be there is a screen, and what you see on that screen. And there may be other things too. I mean, the only thing I can envision now is a screen, but
It could be holograms.
Holograms, right? We don't know. I mean, that's coming for sure. But there's going to be a screen, and what you get on that screen, it's not going to be called the web. It's not going to be called a browser. It's going to be platform independent. It doesn't matter what it is, because everything will be stored in huge data centers, such as Google and Microsoft are building, where there are going to be millions of computers where you can access anything you want, and whether you have Internet Explorer 7 or Mac Safari, whatever it is, you won't have that anymore. You won't need it anymore, because everything will be streamed to your output device, whatever that may be. And 10 years ago, or even longer, the CEO of Sun Microsystem had it right when he said the network is the computer, because you will not have a computer at home anymore. It's not necessary.
I think the industry has been changing so much now over the past couple of years that it's even translating to the way we take on projects. Like now, especially in the online division, you won't find a project that will take anything more than probably 4 months to execute. We turn around projects within about 2 to 3 weeks, and that's a normal turnaround time for us. So because we don't know what the next trend is going to be next year, there's not going to be any project that's going to come across the desk that says it's going to take, you know, a year to execute, because anyone looking at it will say, well, we don't know what we're going to be in a year. You have to do it in a couple of weeks or a couple of months at the most, and that's about as much time turnaround time we have for getting things done and out there before it's stale and old.
More questions? Anybody got a question? Nate's got a question. He always has a question for Dean.
I was on a panel at University, which is about innovation and diversity, cultural and the panel was in panel 4, and it was interesting because that was on Monday, and it was about people who are diverse, culturally diverse, different countries, backgrounds, and also people with disabilities, and their ability to get into traditional media. So I believe traditional media, I think one foot in the grave is a very apt statement to make of traditional media. And our work here is about integrating media, hence the name of this conference. My point that I'm getting at is, do you think there's more opportunities for a wide range of people in interactive and emerging media much more quickly than the traditional print broadcast media that we've known?
Definitely. I think, and that's why I mentioned earlier, if people will have to create the facilities to create the content. I think that's where the key is right now, as far as jobs and what to create. And because the access to the internet is so easy right now, that it'll open doors for other people that traditionally had no access to the traditional media. The output device that I can envision for the future, which is no longer a computer, can be anything and can be catered to anyone in the future, and it will be platform independent. So you don't have to learn a special skill to access it, or obviously there's something to learn, like, you know, we had to learn to use a telephone when it was first invented, but it'll be much easier to access for anyone.
My answer to that would be, one of the downfalls of traditional media is that it is traditional. It refuses to bend. It refuses to be flexible. And if the processes aren't working, there's a refusal to actually change them. And that's why it does take You've got to be an associate, AD, director before you can. You've got to go through the ranks before you can actually get in the door. You've got the heavily unionized aspect of traditional media. It is an incredibly difficult gig to get into, to be actually in the traditional media side. On the new media side, or the what did you called it, integrated or
interactive and emerging.
Yeah, on the emerging side, I think people are given a fresh go. You're judged on what you produce, and I know from my experience, it is actually what you're contributing and what your vision is that is actually where you're going to be considered, and I think it's incredibly enlightening. We actually are honestly, always changing our processes. Yeah. Looking at it on 3 months from now, I could come back here and talk, and things will have changed based on the next 3 months on what we're going to talk about. And some of it is the actual processes of how you're producing work and how it's getting from your brain out to the user. It changes that fast. So I think it is it scares traditional media. It scares the pants off them that we can move this fast, that we can adapt this quickly. But I think it's a really exciting time to be in your shoes right now.
And remember, the threshold to entry into this emerging media is, especially financially, is very, very low. If you wanted to produce a show, and we talked about this already, on a traditional television show, millions, I don't know. Yeah. Right? And for you to go out and buy a camcorder and produce some content that people want to watch,
check out.
Doesn't cost that much.
Do you guys know Pure Ownage at all? Yes. Yeah. Pure Ownage is a web show. It's a couple of hardcore gamers. Ownage is spelt with a P, not with an O, and it's worthwhile checking out their site. They're making their living right now, essentially selling T-shirts based on their content, but they put their content out, and they're getting 3 million people downloading their episodes. It's an incredible success story, and their production value is very low, but it has to stay low to actually be interesting. It's very niche. If you're not a gamer, you won't know what the hell they're talking about. But there's a big population of people that really want to do that, and it's just an example of the success that you can have, like Ron said, right? Ron?
Ron.
Sorry,
Ron's on this side.
Ronald, Robert.
But that's an example. There's many of them.
Well, I think just to comment on traditional media, we work a lot with them, especially the newspapers, and some of the newspapers, like the Ottawa Citizen, is taking great steps in producing original interactive content, a lot of Flash-based sites, and just exclusive content on the web, and they're really moving forward to it in their articles. They'll throw to the website, and they're really big on dedicating original content to it, where we have other papers who don't want anything to do with the web, and in a sense not necessarily fear it, but have gotten on this long without it, and it kind of goes against the paper's existence. So there's a bit of a struggle to have 11 different papers at all different levels and all different willingness to change what they're doing or to embrace the web. That it's been a struggle, and I think it's going to continue to be a bit of a struggle, especially when you get into subscriptions and make some of the content being available online for free, and some of it you're having to pay for it. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes and where it ends up, and if there's any sort of consistency across the different provinces. But in terms of getting into the industry and the media, if you take a look at the differences in job application requirements, I mean, to be a web designer a couple years ago, you had to know Photoshop and Dreamweaver and CSS, and now if you take a look, it's asking for Flash and ActionScript, and programming's a benefit, and video, and it's really embraced. I think the job posting changes are indicative of how you need to have a great range of skills to sort of get your foot in the door.
Yeah, that's something that you can do. You can always just keep tabs on what people are asking for from job requirements. It's probably a very good suggestion to see what employers are looking for, especially in the new media space. It's funny, traditional against new media, going from the web to television was one of the funniest things was, they were asking me like, what's your position, so they can put it in the credit list for the episodes for Chili Beach, and I said, I'm director of technology, right? And I said, and could you check all the people that work for you and where they're placed, so on and so forth. I said, yeah, no problem. I just checked through there, and I said there, and it was funny because I was there like, why does this matter? Like the placement on the credits, because apparently it's a very important thing from traditional media. Like if you're a lead and you're above the other lead, that means you're better in some way. And I kept on laughing because I was there like, I'm just happy to be on the credit list. I don't really care where I'm placed on this credit list. I could be placed at the bottom for all I care. But in the traditional space, it's very important. And then even dealing with the unions, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, you have to go through unions here, and they demand that you have to pay this much. I mean, I think everybody here is probably, well, it depends, it has had stories about ACTRA and, dealing with them in order to get your actors to do their voices for your television shows. And now there's a whole hoopla about, now online. Does it include online? And there's huge discussions around that. But that's the difference there. Like I think it's pretty much traditional media is scared because they will be replaced with new media. In the future, I see that, like in the near future, I see television changing in the sense that maybe like it's not a television channel, it's an IP address behind that, and you'll be flipping through IP addresses. And one of the things to also keep in mind is technology is allowing the producers now to actually produce stuff and go directly to the viewer. They don't actually have to go through the broadcaster. And the perfect example is you can create a website, you have your show on there, and then support it through ad media and selling t-shirts, so on and so forth. You can do this, like you yourselves. You don't have to actually be reliant on a broadcaster. And that's what technology is doing right now.
Further to that point, he brought up a little thing. It is interesting. I don't know about where on CanWest. I'm not familiar with it exactly, but everything we it's very anonymous what we do. We don't have credits on our sites, and who often, I mean, in terms of a lot of creative stuff, we'll use pseudonyms even in blog posts, and it's actually quite liberating. And I think that might speak to a bit more of the opportunity as well, in terms of there isn't that struggle and battle to get up on the credit listing, and it's it is very liberating.
Most of the work I do, we don't credit anything because it's our job to create content, so that'll go up. But there's some people that I've worked with that they'll do an interview and ask to have their name credited at the end of the interview, and they'll want to put down my name, or they think at the end that you'll see some video clips on the web, sometimes from CanWest and other people, that there'll be that little roll of credits at the end, and it's just that sort of combination of traditional media versus online. But for the most part, you can do your job and get away with a handle, and no one will really know, and you don't really need that sort of I put out this clip because it's your job as a content provider, or to be creating original content. So you'll be working on 4 different pieces for 4 different people all day, and you're not really needing to have your name out there, or it's not even that you need to, but it doesn't even occur to you to sort of label it as your own.
Yeah, it's different that way. Ron made a good point earlier about the competition for your eyeballs too, and one thing I can only speak to it from my experience, but there was a real difference at the CBC. There was a feeling of competition between traditional media and the emerging media, in terms of, if they're watching if they're on your website, they're not watching my show, so I'm not going to help you. That's changing. Where I am now at Alliance Atlantis, now that we are all content together, people are recognizing, and when I was at Banff this spring, I went to both the interactive component of Next Media in Banff, but I also went to the broadcast side, and the emerging media is big part of both sides in terms of talking about the broadcaster and traditional, like we're talking about right now. Where I'm sitting now, we're partners, and we are identifying that it might be that you want to watch Mike Holmes on Homes. You might not even know who that is, but on TV. But you also may want to watch it online, or you might want to watch it on one versus the other. It doesn't really matter. We're extending that brand. It is extending the experience, extending the brand, and providing that content. So I think it is starting. I go to quite a few conferences, and the language now is less competitive and a little more, it's part of the solution. So that's encouraging. I think it is.
Well, folks, we're going to wrap up. I want to thank our panelists, Candy, Ron, Pary, Rob. Thank you very much for taking the time. These are very busy folks, and I think we should be very thankful that they came today, because they've got to get back to work. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for coming too. Group that's in the new media and broadcasting and film, we're going to be meeting again after lunch and looking at some more project work that you're going to be doing in hybrid media. But again, thank you very much for coming. We really, really appreciate it, and great to have you. Stick around if you, you guys going to stick around for a few minutes?
Yeah.
If you maybe want to,
I already told the boss I won't be coming back, so.